Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as always, we're going to talk about a ton of really cool science fiction and fantasy books. We're going to have reading updates, reviews, writing updates. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. You can also decide to support the channel by checking out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. All the links are in the description down below. Thank you. Let's start with a shout out. Last month, author Max Moyer announced the release of the second book in the Tempest Rising series. This is called Frostfall. I told you about the first book in this series, which was titled Zodak. I think this is the way it is pronounced. And I'm not going to spoil the description of the second book, of course, but this is a really classic epic fantasy story about a boy that has these huge call to adventure in his fantasy world, but he is reluctant, of course. He doesn't accept immediately this call for adventure until his uncle gets kidnapped. So this is the inciting incident that makes him deciding that it is the moment to accept that call and go on an adventure. And I love the fact that the description is so straightforward. There are other elements, the brief synopsis that we have on Amazon, that tells you more about the main conflict, but I don't think it goes that far into details about the description of the central core of the story. I think this is one of those classic epic fantasy story that will give you most of the experience by just going in blind, enjoying the experience. It sounds really familiar, really comforting, and to be honest, it is actually what we usually search for when we go for epic fantasy stories. So yeah, I'm really curious. I told you about this book more than 1 year ago, and sadly I wasn't able to get it before the announcement of the second one. I think it's going to be released in 2026. And yeah, I love the covers, of course. These are from Jeff Brown. The first book is an award winner too, so yeah, let's give it a try. If you have read this, let me know what you think about it. Another epic fantasy book by author Craig Andrews. This is The Heir of Archonia. And the setup for this one is pretty bleak because it sounds like the kingdom is not in the best position. There are beasts ravaging the west, there are enemies gathering to the south. The throne is gripped by fear and tyranny because 15 years prior to the current event of the story, there was a coup. So it looks like the kingdom is under tyranny. There is a tyrannical reign of kingdom. And we have the classic hero who has decided that he doesn't want to have anything to do with the kingdoms and the politics and everything that's going on there. But he is forced to come back in action because an old friend is calling for his help. And I'm a sucker for that kind of characters. The ones that know too much for their own good. The ones that decide that they're trying to take themselves out of the equation because they're fed up with the whole shenanigans of the politics and the power struggles and all the rest, that are trying, and we know that they will not succeed, to have a peaceful life. This is kind of the setup, for example, for one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, which is The Legend of Tall by Josiah Rosell. And yeah, I'm a scary chicken, I'm a scary cat, I'm a chicken, I'm chickening out, because I'm supposed to read the last book in that series, and I don't have the guts to do that, because I'm pretty sure it will be devastating, but I need to do it. So there are similarities here, and for me this is a good thing, because I love that series so much, and the idea to have something even a little bit similar, it makes me happy. But if you have read this, let me know. This has been out for quite a while, I think last summer. So if you have read The Heir of Archonia, let me know what you think about it. I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. The Book of Origins by Swan. This not only has a killer cover, absolutely gorgeous, I love it, but it also has a really gripping setup because it has this supremacy, a ruthless empire that is controlling everything all around the world, but it maintains this iron grip because they have this secret cabal of spies. Then they're called the Dakir. Dakar? I don't know. This is a spies. They see everything, they control everything, and they do what the empire wants to keep power. Okay, so that's interesting because it makes for a couple of really interesting questions about how that society works, and it poses a few really curious questions about the way we live our life and how we deal with surveillance in general. But we have three characters here. I suppose there will be 3 points of views. These three characters are close to become part of this secret cabal of spies, and they're going against they're going to be subjected to a final trial to become spies. But giving they both desire it and both fear what's going to happen, because it sounds like they're going to live kind of a monastic life, a very restrictive life, and given up everything, the bonds with their families, love, and everything else. And that makes for another couple of really deep discussions about free will and all the rest. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the author is going to deal with kind of themes and questions and probably character and plot development. But something else is happening, because in a distant side of the world there is an undiscovered land, or a newly discovered land, and it sounds like it is rich and lush and ready to be colonized. But there's a catch. Something is going on in the shadows, and it looks like those three apprentices, almost a spy in this setting, will have to deal with what's going on, actually really going on in that undiscovered land. Yeah, it sounds pretty unique, no? Right? Because we love fantasy and epic fantasy because of this thing that we know we'll find in the books, but when we have compelling questions and pretty unique character arcs, that makes for the whole genre, it can elevate the genre to new levels, and good questions usually makes for good stories. So yeah, I'm going to check it out, absolutely. I think this is going to be out at November 1st. Yeah, if you put it in your wish list, let me know. If you are going to read it, let me know. Just recently we had the cover reveal for War Beyond Galaxy by Ana del Alamo. This is a space opera that sounds really cool to me because it looks like it's character driven. We have a pilot, a fighter. She's called Nashtara, and she's forced to spend an awful lot of time with a crew of the enemy. This is an alien species, and they have to travel together through a specific and an uncharted part of space together. And the description is a little bit vague about why they're going there. It looks like there's been a huge accident and they have to pay because of the consequences of that accident, and that these two crews, humans and the other species, they are forced to work together if they're able to do it, because the central conflict is about the question: are we going to do the same mistakes that humanity has done over and over during the last couple of thousand years? Or should they try to cooperate with that alien species to try and solve the main problem of the story? That sounds really interesting, because that's the kind of social science fiction and blend with space opera that I love, when the characters have to go through big questions about the future of humanity, about the societal development of humanity when it will be inevitably go to enter the contact. We have the first contact with some kind of other intelligent species, and that makes it really amazing for me. The cover is really cool. This should be the start of a series, and it sounds really promising for me. So, if you're going to read it, let me know. I absolutely will let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. There was also another cover reveal by KD Marchesi, who's the face and the soul of the channel A Fictional Escapist. And if you follow that channel, you know that he's been hard at work to finish his debut novel, which is a urban fantasy / science fiction novel about humans, experimentations with human genome, and people that are able to turn into beastly creatures, not exactly animal, but kind of the middle. Kind of the middle. And if you look at the cover, it will give you a pretty huge idea about the direction of the novel. I'm actually reading this. I was supposed to beta read this before the final edits, but being myself, me being that slow, I was not able to finish the novel before the end, and that before Chris was able to wrap up the first round of beta reading, but I'm reading it right now. And actually I have an updated version of the novel because I started with the first finished version for beta readers, and now I'm reading a updated version because of course you know how beta reading works. You're supposed to give feedback to the authors that he can take pivotal decisions about the length of characters, character development, description, and all the rest, the meat and bone of the story. So I suppose the version I was reading was a little bit different from what I'm reading right now. And I'm not going to spoil the story. It's about experimentation and coming of age and discovery and self-discovery and self-acceptance. There's quite a bit of survival elements in the story. I like the characters, I like the dynamics and the dialogues, and I will absolutely give you a review as soon as I finish reading it. And if you have this in your wish list, and if you're going to read it too, let me know what you think about it. I was also part for the cover reveal of Hero, A Villain's Origin, which is the first book in the Preter-Human Chronicles by heir Hudson. And this has an incredible cover by Jeff Brown, of course. And this is quite unique between all the books that I read, because if you have been following this channel for quite a while, I know that you know that I have a soft spot for novels about superheroes, but these are not that common. Actually, it's a super small niche between the science fiction / fantasy / science fantasy genre. They're pretty difficult to box outside their pretty specific niche, okay? This is about superheroes, but this story it's kind of have a darker tone because we have this world with preter-humans, okay? They have incredible abilities. There are 8 kind of abilities. They usually have one of those 8 abilities until we have our protagonist, Casimir, I think his name is, that has all of 8 abilities. You know, kind of the Mistings and Mistborn in Mistborn, when they have this incredible amount of super powerful abilities that makes him an incredibly unique preter-human being, okay? And he has a strange relationship with something that happens many years ago, because there was another preter-human that has all of those 8 abilities that was seen as a hero and has a villain, depending from your point of view. But the description says that that man that has all of those 8 abilities, he was trying to reunite a fractured nation. So I think there's a bit of a post-apocalyptic setting here. But then this poor guy has to deal with the fact that he has all of those incredible abilities, but also with a father that has a pretty regimented life. Maybe he's in the military because he says that knowledge, he's trying to indoctrinate his son to search for knowledge and power and control, okay? But in the end of the description says that there's mysteries about actually what happened to that famous heroes that died many years ago, that one that had all of those 8 abilities like our protagonist, and maybe he was murdered. So the setting is interesting. We don't have that much of this kind of specific flavor of fantasy and science fiction, because there's also a prophecy here of an oracle prophesizing about the coming of someone who will save the world. So yeah, I think it leans a little bit more on the science fantasy side of superhero stories, but also the post-apocalyptic setting, or at least some kind of a dystopian setting, okay? It makes it even more special for me. It's kind of a weird genre blend between the Hunger Games, between really gruesome superhero stories like Invincible, you know? So yeah, I'm really curious about this. I'm sold just because of the cover. So it's a win for me. It's a yes please for me. So I'll let you know as soon as I finish reading it. Yeah, really curious about this. Really quick, I'm reading updates. I'm reading The Fugitive Prince, which is the 4th or the 3rd book of the Words of Shadow and Light, Light and Shadow by Janny works, depending on the edition that you have. Yeah, it started with a bang. And I am in a hurry to finish reading it because I may or may not be the guest and for the live stream, because I've been part of this group. We've been reading and commenting and we're reuniting to comment on this series with a group of incredible booktuber and bookish people for the last couple of months, and we switch channel and we host the live stream, taking turns to try and keep it varied and funny. And this is the first time I'm going to host the live stream. I'm going to give you more details on my social, so I encourage you to follow me on X, on Blue Sky, on TikTok, or on Facebook, whatever you want, so that you can see when we have this specific date and the link, so that you can put a placeholder on your YouTube that you know when we are going live to discuss Fugitive Prince, that I'm enjoying very much. This, I think, is going to be a banger of a book, a really strong entry in this series that I'm loving and enjoying so much. I'm also reading Ludik by John Ilho. Ilho? I know the guy, I know the author, I'm supposed to know his surname, but I'm actually not able to spell it correctly. I'm sorry, this is my thing, okay? But the little that I've read, it's really compelling, it's really heartfelt. I can tell that this story has been driven by so much passion. Because of the description, because of the pacing, because of the dialogues. And this is potentially, I know, I can feel it deep in my bones. This is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I know, I'm pretty sure. And I'm also reading Bloodwoven by GJ Terral. And this is also a review copy as Ludik, about a Norse-inspired story about self-discoveries and conflict and mysteries. It sounds, the setup, the couple of chapters that I've read, they're really compelling with a couple of really interesting questions. So I'll let you know what I think about those as soon as I finish reading them. And finally, a little bit of a writing update. It's been a slow month, especially August, because I've been flooded by relatives. You know, I am one of 7 brothers. So during the summer, they usually come back to Sicily to visit me, to visit my mom. So my house is pretty full with people, and it is really difficult to focus because of the amount of people shouting and talking and screaming and playing and cooking food and arguing about stupid things. We're the stereotypical Sicilian family, if we can be, because my mother is Venezuelan and it's an incredible mix, okay? so it has been really difficult to focus and then try to be active and producing, but this small amount that I was able to do, I think is really strong, both on the writing side and translations. For if you don't know, if you're watching the end of the video, I'm pretty sure that you know who I am and what I'm working on. But for the few people that I have decided to be brave and stay until the end of the video because they found this video compelling, I'm writing my second book in English, which is the Sunrise Dagger, which is the sequel to the Crimson Fire, the second book in the Memories of Kenji series. This is bigger, this is more ambitious, this is more action-packed, a little bit darker than the first book. And being such an undertaking, being such a challenging book, it will take me a lot of time to make it readable and a compelling story. But what I'm doing, it's making me really, really happy about the whole process. And I'm learning so much about myself, about my writing style, about my relationship with the writing craft and creating stories as a reader and as a writer myself. So it's been really, really satisfying. And on the translation side, I will not tell you the names of the couple of novels that I have acquired recently that I'm going to translate from English to Italian. And I'm of course working on The Way of a Dan in Italian by the incredible author and professor and booktuber Philip Chase. Yeah, I'm working a lot and I have big plans for this channel. Yeah, a couple of really interesting shakeups for the future of books with Abel, because as you say in the USA, you called me Abel, but my name is Abel, okay? Not Abel, nor Abel, it's Abel, okay? Abel. But I like the way you pronounce my name, even if you do it not properly and not in the correct way. But as I told you, I will probably do more live streams and then try to carve space to publish and upload one video every week at the beginning of next year, because in September there will be our 2 years anniversary for this channel, and we're going to have a live stream to celebrate 2 years on BookTube. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a challenging year, 2020, the end of 2025, the beginning of 2026 on many aspects. Life has been hard lately because of a few shakeups on my personally and life, and because of my family. It's been hard to deal with a lot of things, but I think I'm in a good place mentally, even if life has been challenging. So I'll give you a little bit of a life updates when we do the live stream for the 2 years anniversary of this channel, okay? And as I told you, keep an eye on my social if you want to know exactly where to watch that live stream with all the amazing gang that is supporting me while we read the Wurts and Shadows and Life and Light by Janny Wurts, okay? And now, lastly, a review for you. I just finished reading The Toll of Fortune by A.J.R. Klopp. I'm showing you the book just at the beginning of the review, but then it will be kind of annoying to keep in my hand because for the whole duration of the review we'll have the illustration there, the cover illustration there. This was a review copy sent by the author that I thank. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, because it was difficult to deliver a copy of this one to Sicily, because you know, self-published book or small indie published book, they have distribution to the main channel, but usually if a book is in English, the main market is the US. So there were no copies available in Italy for this one. I think there was something in Germany, something in the UK too, but no online store were distributing this. So the author had to pay for the shipment for itself, buy a copy in the US and ship it to Sicily. It took a lot of time and a lot of money on his part, so I'm really grateful. And I'm grateful especially because it's a good book. I can tell you right now. This is actually pretty short and sweet. I think we are around less than 300 pages, around 271 pages. So this is a fantasy story, but it's also an historical fantasy story because it's so well documented and about a period of time, a very ancient placing in the, I think it's around the Bronze Age, okay? When we have people from the north, people from the south, having a really dark relationship. Some of them already have commercial relationship, but there seems to be mainly at odds and at wars between various countries and civilizations. And we have a couple of really dark, really ominous scenes at the beginning that set up the whole story. We have a prologue with a group of people living in a dreadful setting covered by snow. It looks like this winter is never ending, and they see prophecies about something, that an ancient evil, let's say, that it's re-emerging and it's going to threaten the world, and they're so scared that they do something incredibly tragic to avoid that lurking menace on the background. And then we have the proper protagonist. After the prologue, we have this group of people that have to face a couple of weird things going on. Monsters, and I can tell you just shapeshifters because I don't want you to spoil the stories. They have to face incursions by these weird creatures that they're both familiar and both know not. And then there is a specific moment when actually the story kicks in, when we have a group of young people, I think we can call them scouts, and they come back wounded in a really bad way. And this is proof and a signal that this ancient menace is actually resurfacing, that it is real. But it is complicated because to decide, in order to decide to go and investigate and potentially at war with what's going on, there is a lot of moving parts that have to go and work together on the sociological side of things, personal stakes, and political side. And I really appreciate the fact that it's not snappy on the decision point. It's kind of believable the way politics and religions and sociology they work to make it feasible for a population to decide that they have to act and to face and to accept there's a possibility of a real threat, especially for the kind of threat that we have here. And we have a good dialogue, a good pacing, a couple of really strong action scenes, really strong on an emotional side of things. They're really well descriptive too. The stakes are really high. And then when we have the proper unraveling on the story, an understanding of what's going on, there are a few wow moments there when you actually understand what was going on. What's the origin of the menace, the nature of these creatures, and the nature of the and how they potentially will change the world. One of the very best things that the novel does, since it is set so far in our past, because this is pretty clearly our world, and there are mentions of ancient civilizations, and or maybe an alternative version of our world, but I think it's basically our world. When they mention ancient civilization, there's not a lot of name dropping. The author has this really good ability to give you hints and just a few elements to understand, oh, okay, this looks like a really primitive version of Vikings. This look like like Sumerians, you know? And the way they act and interact, the amount of knowledge about the world that they have, the way they interact between civilizations and as characters, as people, is really interesting, because the aesthetics of this world are not that usual in the fantasy genre, because we have our comfort zones, okay? We have the medieval settings, and now a lot of really Viking stories. We have, during the last decades, more and more Asian, Far East inspired fantasy, ancient China, and ancient Japan, and now more and more from Africa and from other sides of Asia, you know. But this way, this far in the past with this aesthetic, I don't think there's much around of this kind of story. That it is both. It has the familiar bits of a hero story that has to defeat the ancient evil and discovering the truth about the world and himself, but it also has a couple of twists that makes it really specific, really unique. There are a couple of things that I think don't work that much, okay? Because of the reader that I am, I have no doubt that different kind of people will enjoy it in a different way. And that's not to the detriment of the story. This is absolutely a recommended story, okay? You should absolutely check it out because it is well crafted. What I wanted more was the setup for the characters, because you know I am a character-oriented reader. This is short. We have a small setup at the beginning, and then the quest starts to go and solve the problem of the story. And the stakes, though, are so high that, of course, you're afraid for the eventual unraveling on the story and the potential ending because of the huge threat that we have in the back of the story. But if you don't care for the characters, it's kind of a missed opportunity, okay? And I think I cared for the character a little bit less than the other author wanted me to care for them, because we know very little about them at the beginning. Through action and through dialogues, we infer a few things, and while the story progresses, the more the story goes on, the more we know about them through the way they interact with each other, and a few things that they state out loud, okay? Because they say those things in the dialogues. But the story rushes to the main conflict, not the main conflict, the beginning of the conflict so fast, with so little of an introduction for the main group of the protagonists, that it makes it difficult to relate. Had this been a YA story for a younger audience, I could have understood that, because the younger you are, the less you need to form a connection with a character, and it is much, much easier to project yourself inside the head of a character. But the older you get, you know, strong readers, the ones that you want to support the book, especially if you're a debut author, if you're searching for support and reviews, they need a little bit more. This is a story that has a lot of questions, a lot of mysteries, and a good amount of action, but I wouldn't call it an action-packed, totally action-packed story. This is a story that has a lot of weight, a lot of gravitas, but that weight is not supported by the characters because we know so little of them. So what I mean about the setup is that I would have loved to have, you know, you have to show the status quo, we call it as authors. So you have to show the characters in a way, in a pretty menial way, doing what they do in their usual life. So showing what they are as persons, what they want, what they regret, what they dream, and what they're scared about. And then you want to break that equilibrium, okay, that balance with the main call to action and the beginning of the main story, so that you can understand why they work the way they work, they act the way they act. Thank you, people honking down my balcony. Thank you so much for being Sicilian 150%. Okay, but you want to give the characters this foundation, so that when something really dramatic happens, you care about them so much and you understand their train of thought, you know, without spilling it out loud, without doing so much of an internal dialogue, without doing a lot of out loud dialogues because you know them a little bit, at least a little bit. There isn't so much of them for the majority of the characters here, so it was a little bit difficult to try and to build a real connection with them. Okay, but this worked on a lesser extent for me because I'm a character-driven reader. I have no doubts that reader that wants shorter story, straight to the point, like this one, will appreciate it much more than me. I liked it so much because it is a well-crafted story. There is an elegance in the way the author decided to be restrained in the amount of information that he gave you. But that means also there is a little bit, very little of description in a way. Okay, there is no space for any kind of poetic writing. And that's weird because we actually have poems in the story. Okay, we have verses for prophecies and for chants. Okay, but in the actual paragraph of the story, it is so stripped down and so direct that for me, I like stories that are a little bit more flowery and complex on the words made side of things. And that doesn't mean, as I told you, that the story is not good, because it is well described. And it is pretty original, as I told you. The fact that it centers on a group of characters and they live in so far in the past, I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity here too, because the aesthetics of this world were, I think they're interesting, but they were not shown that much in the story, because you have to do a lot of heavy lifting for yourself to envision this world. So yeah, it is original. It could have been so much more in-depth, okay? Both on the character side and on the descriptive side. All the rest works. The plotting, the little bit of twists, the action scenes, the pacing. This is a quick read and you'll fly through the pages. So, okay? It's a compelling novel. It could have been a masterpiece, okay? But I think there was also a lot of intent. I think this is exactly the kind of story the author was trying to tell, in exactly the way he wanted to tell. So I respect that. Okay? So if you have read this, let me know what you think about it, and you should absolutely check it out if you haven't read this still. This is all I've got for you today. Thank you for staying here, staying with me until the end of the video. Remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. You can also support the channel by checking out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. All the links are in the description down below. But if you want to see more videos like this, right here, right now, you have more videos like this, right here, right now. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for being awesome. I'll see you in the next one.